The gentle hum of a Rolls-Royce Ghost pierced through the silence of Cedar Grove Park, its headlights cutting through the autumn mist. Behind the wheel, Karim al-Rashid loosened his Italian silk tie, feeling the weight of endless business meetings, finally settling on his shoulders. The Lebanese-American businessman had built his fortune from nothing, transforming a small tech startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But tonight, something felt different. The usual satisfaction of another successful day eluded him. Pulling into a secluded spot overlooking the city lights, Karim stepped out of his car, seeking a moment of solitude before returning to his mansion in the hills. The crisp October air carried the scent of fallen leaves, and the distant city sparkled like scattered diamonds against the velvet night sky. His wife Amira would be waiting up for him, probably curled up in their library with one of her medical journals. Old habits from her nursing days died hard. As he walked along the winding path, something caught his attention. A figure moved, unsteadily through the shadows, and as Karim's eyes adjusted to the darkness, his heart nearly stopped. A young girl, no more than 14, stumbled forward, clutching 2 infants against her threadbare jacket. Her feet were bare, leaving faint impressions in the dewy grass, and her movements suggested she was at the very edge of her strength. "Hey!" Karim called out, his voice gentle but urgent. "Are you all right?" The girl turned, her eyes wide with fear, but before she could respond, her knees buckled. Karim lunged forward, managing to catch her and the babies before they hit the ground. The infants whimpered softly, their tiny faces pinched with exhaustion and hunger. The girl's skin burned with fever against his hands, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Without hesitation, Karim gathered them all into his car, his mind already racing ahead to what needed to be done. As he drove toward his estate, he called Amira on the car's Bluetooth system. "Habibi," he said using their private term of endearment, "I'm bringing home some guests who need your help, medical help." Amira's response was immediate and practical, just as it had been during her years in the emergency room. "I'll prepare the guest suite and my medical supplies. What are we dealing with?" A teenage girl with a high fever and 2 infants. All of them appear severely undernourished. When they arrived at the mansion, Amira was waiting at the door, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, medical bag in hand. Her eyes widened at the sight of the children, but she wasted no time in taking charge of the situation. Together, they carried the unconscious girl and the babies into the prepared suite, where Amira immediately began her assessment. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Amira worked tirelessly, setting up IV fluids for the girl and carefully examining the infants. The babies were twin boys, approximately 8 months old, suffering from dehydration and malnutrition, but otherwise remarkably resilient. The girl's condition was more serious, her body pushed well beyond its limits. As dawn began to paint the sky in soft pastels, the girl finally stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of amber, filled with confusion and fear. She tried to sit up abruptly, panic evident in every movement. "My brothers," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "Where are my brothers?" "They're right here," Amira soothed, gesturing to the portable cribs where the twins slept peacefully. "They're safe. You're all safe." The girl's eyes darted between Amira and Karim, then to the luxurious room around her. Her hands clutched the silk sheets, and for a moment, it seemed she might try to run. But exhaustion and the gentle reassurance in Amira's voice seemed to win out. "I'm Amira," the woman said softly. "And this is my husband, Karim. Can you tell us your name?" After a long pause, the girl whispered, "Sarah. My brothers are Adam and Aaron." "Sarah," Amira repeated warmly. "You've been very brave taking care of your brothers. But now you need to let us help you. Can you trust us with that?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she looked at her sleeping brothers. The weight of everything she'd been carrying, both literally and figuratively, seemed to crash down on her at once. She nodded, a single tear tracking down her cheek. Karim watched this exchange from the doorway, feeling something shift inside him. In all his years of business dealings and charitable contributions, he'd never felt quite like this. These children had awakened something in him, a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. Looking at Amira's face, he could see she felt it too. What neither of them knew was that this chance encounter in the park would set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. As the first rays of sunrise painted the room in golden light, none of them could have predicted the challenges, threats, and profound love that lay ahead. For now, in that quiet moment of dawn, they were simply 6 people whose paths had crossed in the most unexpected way, brought together by fate or providence in a park on an autumn night. Over the next few days, Sarah's story emerged in fragments, each piece more heartbreaking than the last. Amira would sit with her during the quiet afternoon hours while the twins napped, gradually earning the girl's trust. The comfortable silence of the mansion's sunlit solarium provided a safe space for Sarah to finally unburden herself. "Mom got sick last spring," Sarah began one afternoon, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the plush velvet cushions. "She tried to hide it from us at first, but it got worse so quickly." Her voice trembled slightly, but she pressed on. "Dad, he couldn't handle it. He started drinking, staying out late. When Mom needed him most, he just disappeared into bottles." Amira reached out, taking Sarah's hand in hers. The girl's fingers were still too thin, but they were warmer now, stronger than when she'd first arrived. "You don't have to continue, if it's too difficult," Amira said softly. But Sarah shook her head, determination glinting in her amber eyes. "No, I want you to know. After Mom," she swallowed hard, "after we lost her, Dad changed completely. He'd come home angry, breaking things, screaming about how unfair everything was. The twins would cry, and that would make him even angrier." Across the room, Karim stood in the doorway listening. He'd cancelled 3 business trips already, unwilling to leave while these children needed him. Something about Sarah's quiet strength reminded him of his own childhood in Dearborn, Michigan, watching his immigrant parents work themselves to exhaustion to provide for their family. "The night we left," Sarah continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, "Dad came home worse than ever. He was yelling about medical bills and how we were ruining his life. When he raised his hand," she took a shuddering breath, "I couldn't let him hurt the twins, I just couldn't. So I waited until he passed out, packed what I could carry, and ran." Amira's grip on Sarah's hand tightened protectively. "You did the right thing, Habibi. You protected your brothers when no one else would." "But I failed them too," Sarah's voice cracked. "We had nowhere to go. I tried shelters, but they were all full. I was afraid they'd separate us. The twins were getting sick and I couldn't." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Karim moved from his position in the doorway, kneeling before Sarah. "You haven't failed anyone," he said firmly. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, and I've met presidents and prime ministers. Look at me, Sarah." He waited until she raised her eyes to his. "You kept your brothers alive and safe against impossible odds. That's not failure. That's extraordinary strength." A cry from the nursery interrupted the moment. Sarah immediately started to rise, but Amira gently pushed her back down. "Rest, Habibi. I'll check on them." As Amira left the room, Karim settled into the chair across from Sarah. "There's something I'd like to discuss with you," he began carefully. "Amira and I have been talking. We'd like to petition for temporary guardianship of you and the twins, just until we can ensure your safety and well-being." Sarah's eyes widened. You want us to stay?" "More than that." Karim leaned forward, his expression serious. "We want to protect you legally, give you a real home, not just a temporary shelter, but only if that's what you want. We won't force anything on you." Before Sarah could respond, Amira returned with the twins, now awake and babbling happily. 8-month-old Adam and Aaron had already transformed under a week of proper care, their cheeks filling out, their eyes bright and curious. They reached for Sarah immediately, but also smiled at Karim and Amira. They'd quickly grown attached to their new caregivers. As Sarah gathered her brothers close, she looked around the sunlit room, taking in the peaceful atmosphere, the gentle way Amira handled the babies, the sincere concern in Karim's eyes. For the first time in months, she felt safe, protected, valued. "Would we She hesitated, then gathered her courage. Would we be like a real family? Oh, my dear, Amira moved to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. We already are. The moment was interrupted by the harsh ring of the doorbell. Through the solarium's windows, they could see a police car in the circular driveway. Karim stood, straightening his jacket. "Stay here with Amira," he said calmly, but there was an edge to his voice. "I'll handle this." As he walked toward the front door, Karim's mind raced through possibilities. Had Sarah's father finally noticed his children were missing? Had someone reported seeing him with the children that night in the park? Whatever was coming, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would not let anyone harm these children. Not ever again. The heavy wooden door creaked slowly open, and Karim steeled himself for whatever challenge awaited on the other side. In the solarium, Sarah clutched her brothers closer, her heart pounding as she watched Karim disappear into the foyer. The peaceful afternoon had shattered, and the shadows of her past were suddenly looming larger than ever. The police officers in the foyer were Detective Lisa Martinez and her partner, Detective James Chen. They carried themselves with the practiced ease of veterans, but their expressions held genuine concern rather than suspicion. Karim invited them into his study, away from the solarium where Sarah and Amira waited anxiously. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Detective Martinez began, her dark eyes studying him carefully. "We're here about 3 missing children, Sarah, Adam, and Aaron Sullivan. Their father, Robert Sullivan, filed a report this morning claiming they were kidnapped." Karim's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "The children are here," he said directly. "They're safe, and they're under my protection. Sarah brought her brothers here to escape an abusive situation. I have my legal team preparing documentation for emergency temporary guardianship." Detective Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a serious allegation, Mr. Al-Rashid. Do you have any evidence to support the abuse claims?" Besides Sarah's testimony and their physical condition when they arrived, Karim moved to his desk, retrieving a thick folder. "My wife is a former ER nurse. She documented everything. Their injuries, signs of malnutrition, psychological trauma. We also have security footage from the night I found them in Cedar Grove Park. Sarah was unconscious, running a dangerous fever, and the twins were severely dehydrated." The detectives reviewed the documentation, their expressions growing grimmer with each page. "This is thorough," Martinez admitted, "but Mr. Sullivan is their legal guardian, without clear evidence of immediate danger." "Then let me show you the evidence." Amira's voice came from the doorway. She stood there, elegant and composed, holding a tablet. "I've compiled medical records, including emergency room visits, that were never followed up on. There's also this." She handed the tablet to Detective Martinez, who watched a security video from the park showing Sarah's collapse and Karim's rescue of the children. The timestamp matched their story perfectly. "We need to speak with Sarah," Detective Chen said finally. "Alone." Karim and Amira exchanged glances before nodding. "She's in the solarium with her brothers," Amira said. "But please, she's still recovering." Detective Martinez's expression softened. "We'll be gentle. We're here to help, not cause more trauma." In the solarium, Sarah sat straight-backed and resolute, though her hands trembled slightly as she recounted her story. The twins, sensing her distress, stayed unusually quiet in their playpen, watching with solemn eyes. When she described the night she fled, her voice grew stronger, fueled by the need to protect her brothers. "Dad would get so angry," she explained, her amber eyes meeting Detective Martinez's steady gaze. "He'd throw things, scream about how we ruined his life after we lost Mom. The twins would cry and that would make him worse. That last night when he raised his fist." She swallowed hard. "I couldn't let him hurt them. They're just babies." The interview lasted over an hour, with the detectives taking detailed notes and asking careful questions. When they finally emerged from the solarium, their decision seemed made. "We'll be filing a report recommending temporary protective custody with you and Mrs. Al-Rashid," Detective Martinez informed Karim. "Given the evidence and Sarah's testimony, we believe removing them from Mr. Sullivan's custody is in the children's best interest." However, she held up a warning hand. You should know that he's hired a lawyer. This isn't over. As if to punctuate her words, Karim's phone buzzed with a text from his head of security. Robert Sullivan had been spotted driving past the mansion's gates twice in the last hour. We'll increase patrols in the area, Detective Chen assured them, noting Karim's expression. And we'll fast-track the protective order. After the detectives left, Karim found Amira in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of their bed with her head in her hands. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "What are we doing, Karim?" She whispered. "Taking on 3 children, challenging their father's custody. This isn't like donating to charity or funding a hospital wing. This is exactly what we're meant to do," he finished firmly. "You've seen how Sarah lights up when she feels safe, how the twins are thriving. They belong here, Amira, with us. But their father won't give up easily," she warned. "I saw his type in the ER, men who feel entitled to control everything and everyone around them. He'll fight us, and it could get ugly." Karim's expression hardened. "Let him try. I built my company from nothing, fighting off corporate raiders and hostile takeovers. I can handle one angry man who hurt his children." A soft knock interrupted them. Sarah stood in the doorway, the twins balanced on each hip. They'd grown stronger in the past week, but still preferred to stay close to their sister. I heard the police talking," she said hesitantly, "about Dad coming back for us." Amira immediately moved to embrace her, careful of the babies. "Nothing is going to happen to you or your brothers, Habibi, we promise." "But what if he tries to take us?" Sarah's voice quavered. "What if the court says we have to go back?" Karim joined his wife and the children, creating a protective circle around them. "That's not going to happen," he said with quiet intensity. "Your father may have money for lawyers, but I have resources too. More importantly, we have the truth on our side. And Sarah." He waited until she looked up at him. "You're not alone anymore. Whatever comes next, we face it together, as a family." Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the mansion's manicured grounds. Somewhere in those shadows, Robert Sullivan seethed with rage and resentment, plotting his next move. But inside, surrounded by love and protection, Sarah finally began to believe that happy endings weren't just for fairy tales. Sometimes they could happen in real life too, if you were brave enough to fight for them. The following weeks brought a flurry of legal meetings and court appearances, but they also brought moments of unexpected joy. The mansion, once an elegant showcase of wealth and success, transformed into a true home filled with children's laughter and the chaos of family life. One morning, as autumn painted the surrounding mountains in brilliant colors, Amira stood in the doorway of the newly decorated nursery, watching Sarah read to the twins. The room had been completely transformed from its original state as a guest suite. Now soft cream walls featured hand-painted scenes from children's stories, while twin cribs with matching blue bedding stood side by side near the window. "And then the little bird found his way home," Sarah read softly, her voice taking on different inflections for each character. Adam and Aaron sat transfixed, their identical faces serious as they absorbed every word. At 14 months old, they were already showing distinct personalities. Adam was the more adventurous one, while Aaron was quieter, more observant. "They love your stories," Amira said, entering the room with a tray of healthy snacks. "You have such a gift with them." Sarah looked up, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Mom used to read to us like this," she said quietly. "She did all the voices too." Amira set down the tray and sat beside them on the plush carpet. "Tell me about her," she encouraged gently. They'd learned that Sarah needed to talk about her mother to keep her memory alive. She was amazing. Sarah's eyes took on a faraway look. She could make anything fun, even when things were hard, and she never gave up, even when she was really sick. "She made me promise to take care of the twins, to keep them safe and loved." Her voice caught. "I hope she'd be proud of what I did." "Oh, Habibi." Amira pulled her close, careful not to disturb the twins. She would be so proud of you. You've been so brave, so strong." Their moment was interrupted by Karim's arrival. He looked tired but satisfied, his suit slightly rumpled from a long day of meetings. The twins immediately crawled toward him, demanding attention, and he scooped them up with practiced ease. "Good news from the lawyers," he announced, settling into the oversized rocking chair with a baby on each knee. "The judge granted us extended temporary custody pending the final hearing. And," he added, his expression turning serious, "they've served your father with a restraining order. He can't come within 500 feet of any of you." Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly, but there was still worry in her eyes. "Did they find him?" "He hasn't been at his house. The police are monitoring the situation," Karim assured her, choosing his words carefully. "What's important is that you're safe here. Which reminds me, I've hired additional security personnel, and we're installing some upgrades to the property's surveillance system." Amira caught his eye, reading the concern he was trying to hide. Later, after the children were asleep, he would tell her about the threatening messages Robert Sullivan had been sending to his office, about the increasingly erratic behavior reported by the private investigators. But for now, they maintained a calm facade for Sarah's. "Saki, I have another surprise," Karim continued, brightening his tone. "Remember how you mentioned wanting to go back to school?" Sarah nodded eagerly. She'd been homeschooling herself as best she could while caring for the twins, but she missed real classes and interaction with other kids her age. "Well, I spoke with the headmistress at Riverside Academy. They're willing to admit you mid-semester with some tutoring to help you catch up. Their security is excellent, and they understand our situation." Sarah's eyes widened. "Riverside? But that's the best school in the state." "And you deserve the best education," Amira said firmly. "We've already ordered your uniforms and supplies." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, but these were happy tears, the kind she'd been crying more often lately. "I don't know how to thank you both for everything." "You don't need to thank us," Karim said softly. "You're our daughter now in every way that matters. Your happiness, your safety, your future, these are our priorities." The twins chose that moment to demand attention, babbling excitedly and reaching for their sister. Sarah gathered them close, and for a moment, they were just a normal family sharing a peaceful evening. But later that night, as Sarah lay in her bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The wind whispered through the trees, outside her window, and shadows seemed to dance across her walls. She tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but her instincts, the same ones that had helped her protect her brothers, were screaming that danger was coming. In their master suite, Karim and Amira were having a similar discussion. The security report showed increasing activity around the property's perimeter. Robert Sullivan had been spotted in a bar near the mansion, ranting about rich people stealing his children and promising revenge. "Maybe we should consider moving." "Temporarily," Amira suggested, her fingers nervously twisting her wedding ring. "Just until things calm down." Karim pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her jasmine perfume. "We can't live in fear, Habibti. This is our home. The children finally feel safe here. We have security. We have the law on our side." "But we both know the law isn't always enough," Amira whispered. "I've seen too many protective orders violated. Too many people hurt because they thought paper could stop someone filled with rage." Before Karim could respond, a soft knock came at their door. Sarah stood, there in her pajamas, looking young and vulnerable. "I had a bad dream," she admitted. Can I stay with you for a while?" Without hesitation, they welcomed her into their bed, just as they had several times since her arrival. As Sarah drifted off to sleep between them, Karim and Amira exchanged worried glances over her head. They had created something precious here, a family forged not by blood but by love and choice, and they would do anything to protect it. Sarah's first day at Riverside Academy marked a significant turning point. Standing in her crisp new uniform, navy blazer, pleated skirt, and polished loafers, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Amira had carefully braided her honey-brown hair, and for the first time in months, Sarah looked like what she was, a normal teenage girl. "Remember," Karim said as they pulled up to the school's impressive gates in his Range Rover, "Marcus." From security will be nearby all day. If you need anything at all, just text or call us. Sarah nodded, clutching her leather backpack. Will you check on the twins? Aaron had a little cough this morning. They have their pediatrician appointment at 10, Amira assured her from the front seat. We'll send you updates, Habibi. Try to focus on your classes. As Sarah walked through the historic halls of Riverside Academy, she felt the other students' curious glances. Mid-semester transfers were rare, especially to such a prestigious school, but she'd faced far worse than teenage scrutiny. You must be Sarah Sullivan Al-Rashid, a warm voice called out. A girl with copper-colored curls and friendly green eyes approached her. I'm Emma Chen. Mrs. Patterson asked me to show you around. My dad's one of the detectives working with your family. Sarah relaxed slightly, remembering Detective Chen's kind demeanor. Nice to meet you, she managed to smile. I'm a little lost. Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. Emma linked arms with her casually, as if they'd been friends forever. We have most of our classes together. Fair warning, Mr. Roberts' advanced literature class is first, and he always cold calls new students. As they walked to class, Emma chatted about school life, clubs, and the upcoming fall festival. It felt surreal to Sarah, discussing normal teenage concerns after everything she'd been through, yet somehow it also felt right. Mr. Roberts did indeed call on Sarah during their discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird, but her thoughtful analysis of Scout's perspective earned her an approving nod. By lunchtime, she had begun to relax, even joining Emma and her friends at their sunny table in the courtyard. So, a girl named Lily leaned forward conspiratorially. Is it true that your new house has its own movie theater? Lily, Emma scolded, you can't just ask about that stuff. It's okay, Sarah surprised herself by laughing. Yes, there's a theater room, but honestly, we mostly use it to watch cartoons with the twins. They're obsessed with Finding Nemo. The conversation flowed easily after that, with the girls asking about the twins and sharing stories about their own siblings. For a few precious hours, Sarah felt like any other teenager. But reality crashed back when she checked her phone between classes. 3 missed calls from Amira. Her hands shaking, she ducked into an empty classroom to return the call. Sarah, everything's fine, Amira said quickly, clearly hearing the panic in Sarah's hello. The twins are perfect. The doctor said Aaron's. Cough is just a mild cold, but there's something else. The police called. Your father was spotted near your old school this morning. Sarah's blood ran cold. He knows I'm at Riverside now, right? He can't come anywhere near. You, Amira assured her. The school is secure and Marcus is right there. Do you want us to come pick you up early? Sarah considered it, tempted by the safety of home, but then she thought of Emma's friendship, of Mr. Roberts' challenging questions, of the simple joy of being a normal student. No, she said firmly, I want to stay. That's my brave girl, Amira's voice filled with pride. Call us if you need anything. Love you, Habibi. Love you too, Sarah replied, the words coming naturally now. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes, new faces, and information. In her final period, advanced mathematics, Sarah found herself partnered with a quiet boy named David. Zhang for a problem-solving exercise. His methodical approach reminded her of Karim, and they worked well together, finishing the assignment early. You're really good at this, David commented as they packed up. We have math club meetings on Thursdays if you're interested. Emma's in it too. Sarah hesitated. A regular after-school activity seemed like tempting fate. But wasn't this what normal teenagers did? I'll think about it, she promised. As she walked toward the parking lot where Karim waited, Emma and David fell into step beside her. We usually grab smoothies after school, Emma said casually. Want to join us tomorrow? Dad says it's safe. The cafe is right across from the police station. The simple invitation nearly brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Friends, smoothies, homework, such normal things that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. I'll ask Karim and Amira, she said, but I'd like that. Seeing Karim's car, she waved goodbye to her new friends and hurried over. The twins' car seats were visible in the back, both boys sleeping peacefully after their busy day at the pediatrician. Good day? Karim asked as she buckled in. Sarah looked back at her sleeping brothers, then at the school where she'd just made her first real friends in years. Despite the shadow of her father's presence, despite the fear that still lingered, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. "The best," she answered truthfully. "It feels like we're finally building a real life." What Sarah didn't see was the man watching from a distant car, his hands clenched on the steering wheel, his eyes burning with a dangerous mix of rage and determination. Robert Sullivan had spent the day learning his daughter's new routine, and he was already forming a plan. The Al-Rashids thought their money and influence could steal his children, but they were about to learn that a father's rights couldn't be bought, not even by billionaires. The autumn days fell into a comfortable routine. Every morning, Sarah would help feed the twins their breakfast before heading to school, where Emma and David had become her closest friends. After school, they would study together in the library or get smoothies at the cafe across from the police station, always under the watchful eye of Marcus, her security detail. One crisp October afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, Emma and David joined Sarah at the mansion for a group project. It was the first time she'd invited friends over, and Amira had gone all out, preparing a spread of traditional Lebanese treats alongside typical teenage snacks. "Your house is amazing," Emma breathed, taking in the soaring ceilings and elegant decor. But what caught her attention most was the sound of children's laughter echoing from the family room. "Those would be my brothers," Sarah explained, leading them toward the noise. "They're probably having their afternoon dance party with Amira." Sure enough, they found Amira twirling around the room with Aaron in her arms, while Adam bounced enthusiastically in his playpen, both twins giggling uncontrollably. Arabic children's music played softly in the background, part of what Amira called their cultural education. "Oh my goodness, they're adorable!" Emma rushed over to wave at the twins, who immediately showed off their newest trick, blowing kisses. "They've grown so much," David commented, surprising Sarah. At her questioning look, he explained, "My mom's a nurse at the children's hospital. She was there when Detective Chen brought in their medical records. She couldn't give details, but she said it was a miracle you got them out when you did." Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her chest, but Amira smoothly intervened. "And now, they're the healthiest, happiest little boys. Would you all like some canapé? It's a traditional dessert, my mother's recipe." As they settled into their study session in the mansion's library, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how different her life had become. Her friends treated the twins like beloved little brothers, helping to entertain them when they toddled in to investigate the newcomers. Even Karim joined them briefly, discussing their mathematics project with genuine interest and offering insights from his business experience. "Your parents are incredible," Emma said later, as they took a break, on the library's window seat. "The way they just opened their hearts to you and the twins. They're not exactly my parents," Sarah started to say, but David interrupted gently. "Family isn't just blood," he said quietly. "My sister's adopted from China. Trust me, love is what makes a family real." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted from the security room down the hall. Karim's voice carried, sharp with concern. Sarah's heart began to race. She knew that tone. "Stay here," she told her friends, but they followed her anyway, hovering uncertainly in the doorway of the security room. The wall of monitors showed various angles of the property. Karim stood with the head of security. Both men focused intently on one particular screen. Sarah's blood ran cold when she saw what they were watching. Robert Sullivan's car was parked just outside the property's main gate. He wasn't trying to hide. In fact, he seemed to want to be seen, leaning against his car with his arms crossed, staring directly into the camera. "He's been there for 20 minutes, the security chief was saying. "Police are on their way, but he's technically on public property. He's sending a message." Karim's voice was tight with controlled anger, "letting us know he can get this close." Sarah felt her knees buckle, but suddenly Emma and David were there, supporting her from either side. "That's him," Emma whispered. "That's your father." "That's Robert Sullivan," Sarah corrected firmly, surprising herself with her steady voice. "Karim is my father now." Amira appeared behind them, having settled the twins with their nanny. "Sarah, Habibi, you don't need to watch this. Your friend's parents are on their way to pick them up and—" "No," Sarah straightened her spine. "I'm not hiding. We're in the middle of a project, and he's not ruining this too. He can stand out there all day. I'm not afraid anymore." The pride in Amira's eyes matched Karim's expression as he turned to face them. "Nevertheless, perhaps we should move. This study session to the family room, it's more comfortable and the twins would love the company." Understanding what they were doing, keeping her away from windows facing the front of the property, Sarah nodded. As they gathered their books, she caught David and Emma exchanging determined looks. "We're staying," Emma announced. "Dad always says safety in numbers, and anyway, we're not finished with our project. Plus," David added with a slight smile, "I really want to try more of that kanafe." In the family room, they spread their books across the floor while the twins played nearby. Sarah found herself relaxing despite knowing who waited outside. Her friend's steady presence, the twins' innocent laughter, Amira's quiet strength as she worked nearby, and Karim's protective energy as he coordinated with security and police, it all combined to make her feel secure in a way she hadn't thought possible. Hours later, when her friends had gone home and the twins were asleep, Sarah stood in the nursery watching her brothers' peaceful faces. The police had finally convinced Robert Sullivan to leave, but his message had been received. He wasn't giving up. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Karim's voice came softly from the doorway. "I was just thinking," Sarah turned to face him, "about what David said, about family being more than blood." Karim crossed the room to stand beside her, looking down at the sleeping twins. "He's a wise young man." "When I was little," Sarah continued, her voice barely a whisper, "I used to dream about having a real family, not just people who shared my DNA, but people who really loved and protected each other. I never thought," she wiped away a tear, "I never thought I'd find it like this." Karim wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and they stood in comfortable silence watching the twins sleep. Outside, the night was dark and full of uncertainties, but in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. What they didn't know was that Robert Sullivan had spent his hours outside the gate making detailed notes about the property's security patterns. He'd noticed the guard changes, the camera positions, and most importantly, the routine of the family inside. His message wasn't just about showing he could get close. It was about gathering information. Soon, he would be ready to take back what he considered his. The fall festival at Riverside Academy transformed the historic campus into a wonderland of autumn colors and activities. Students and families milled about, enjoying games, food stands, and performances. For Sarah, it represented another step toward normalcy, her first school event with both her new family and friends. Karim and Amira had gone all out for the occasion. The twins wore matching sweater vests that made them look like tiny professors, drawing coos from everyone who passed by. Amira had helped Sarah style her hair in elegant waves, and she wore a new burgundy dress that made her feel both sophisticated and age-appropriate. "The drama club's performance is about to start," Emma announced, appearing with David in tow. Both carried massive cups of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. "Your brothers are going to love it. They're doing scenes from The Lion King." Sarah glanced at the twins, who were currently fascinated by the falling leaves. "They've never seen a live performance before," she said softly. "They've never done any of this." Understanding flickered across her friends' faces. These simple childhood experiences, school festivals, plays, cotton candy, and face painting, were all new to the boys. Even Sarah had missed out on many of them while struggling to survive. "Then we'll make sure it's extra special," David said firmly, pulling a paper crown from his backpack, part of the math club's probability game booth. He placed it carefully on Aaron's head, while Emma did the same for Adam. "Now they're properly dressed for the theater," Emma declared, making the twins giggle. They found seats near the front of the outdoor amphitheater, spreading blankets on the stone steps. The twins settled into Amira and Karim's laps, their eyes wide with wonder, as the student performers took the stage in colorful costumes. Sarah sat between her friends, feeling perfectly content. The autumn air was crisp but not cold. The setting sun painted the sky in breathtaking colors, and she was surrounded by people she loved. For a moment, she could almost forget about the shadows that still haunted their happiness. Then she saw him. Robert Sullivan stood at the back of the amphitheater, partially hidden behind a pillar. He looked different, thinner, scruffier, his eyes burning with an intensity that made Sarah's blood run cold. But what terrified her most was that he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the twins. Sarah's hand found Emma's, squeezing so hard it must have hurt, but her friend understood immediately. With remarkable calm, Emma pulled out her phone, pretending to take selfies while actually photographing Robert's position. Meanwhile, David had quietly alerted Marcus, who was already moving through the crowd. "We need to get the twins out of here," Sarah whispered to Karim, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's here." Karim's expression didn't change, but his body tensed. He smoothly stood up, lifting Aaron while Amira did the same with Adam. "Time for a snack break," he announced cheerfully, but his eyes scanned the crowd with laser focus. They moved as a group toward the festival's main building, but Robert had anticipated this. He appeared suddenly in their path, looking surprisingly composed in a clean dress shirt and slacks. "My children seem well," he said, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby families. "I'm glad the Al-Rashids have been taking such good care of what belongs to me." Sarah felt the twins hide their faces against Karim and Amira's shoulders. Their reactions spoke volumes about their memories of their biological father. "Mr. Sullivan," Karim's voice was steel wrapped in silk, "you're violating a court order. Please leave before the police arrive." "The police?" Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think you can hide behind restraining orders and security guards forever? These are my children, my flesh and blood. No amount of money can change that." "Blood doesn't make a father," Sarah found herself saying, stepping forward. "Love does. Protection does. Being there does." Robert's eyes snapped to her, and for a moment she saw something flicker in them, pain perhaps or regret, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "You ungrateful little—" "Step away." From the children, Mr. Sullivan. Detective Martinez's voice cut through the tension. She and Detective Chen approached from different directions, effectively boxing Robert in. Other officers appeared at the perimeter, and Marcus stood ready nearby. "This isn't over," Robert snarled, but his composure was cracking. "You can't keep them forever. I'll prove what you did, kidnapping my children, turning them against— But the only thing that turned us against you was you." Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong. "Every bottle, every angry word, every time you made us feel worthless and afraid. But we're not afraid anymore. We found real love, real protection. We found our true family." The crowd that had gathered murmured sympathetically. Several parents pulled out phones, recording the confrontation. Robert Sullivan looked around, suddenly aware of how many witnesses were present. "Come on, Mr. Sullivan," Detective Chen said quietly. "Don't make this worse than it already is." For a terrible moment, Sarah thought he might try something desperate. His hands clenched and unclenched, and his eyes darted between the twins and the gathering crowd. But finally, his shoulders slumped. "This isn't how it ends," he said, but the words sounded hollow. As the detectives led him away, Sarah caught a last glimpse of his face. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else— desperation. Later that night, after the twins were asleep and Emma and David had gone home, Sarah sat in the family room with Karim and Amira. The festival's excitement had faded, leaving behind a heavy exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I ruined the festival." "You didn't ruin anything," Amira pulled her close. "You stood up to him. You showed incredible strength." "But he'll try again," Sarah's voice shook. "He won't stop until he faces the consequences of his actions," Karim finished firmly. "The police have enough now to charge him with violating the restraining order, and thanks to all those witnesses and recordings, no judge will look favorably on his custody claims." Sarah leaned into Amira's embrace, feeling Karim's strong hand on her shoulder. Outside, the security team patrolled the grounds with increased vigilance. The night was dark, but she was surrounded by light and love. "We should still have the party tomorrow," she said suddenly. They had planned a small celebration for the twins' vocabulary milestone. They had finally started saying Mama and Dada, directed squarely at Amira and Karim. "Are you sure?" Amira asked gently. "Yes," Sarah sat up straighter. "We can't let him steal any more joy from us. The twins deserve their party. We all deserve to be happy." What none of them realized was that Robert Sullivan's appearance at the festival wasn't the desperate last attempt. It was a carefully planned reconnaissance. Even as they discussed security measures and legal consequences, he was in a motel room across town, reviewing the photos he'd taken of the mansion's blind spots and the notes he'd made about the family's routines. The festival confrontation was just a distraction, meant to make them think he was becoming reckless. The real plan was yet to come. The twins' milestone celebration turned out to be exactly what the family needed. Emma and David came over with their parents, bringing homemade cards and small gifts. Detective Martinez and Chen also stopped by, both off duty but vigilant. The family room was filled with balloons, and Amira had outdone herself with a spread of Middle Eastern and American treats. "Mama, Dada!" The twins showed off their new words to everyone who would listen, beaming with pride each time they earned applause and praise. They toddled between guests, accepting cuddles and showing off their walking skills, which improved daily. "It's amazing how far they've come," Detective Martinez commented, watching the boys play. "When we first saw their case files—" "Let's focus on today," Amira interrupted gently, passing out plates of baklava. She'd learned to redirect conversations away from the past, especially during happy moments. Sarah sat with Emma and David, watching her brothers charm the room. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real," she confessed. "Having friends, a real family, celebrations, just because the twins learned new words." "Speaking of words," David said, pulling out an envelope, "we have something for you too." Inside was a handmade card signed by their entire math club. Honorary member Sarah Sullivan Al-Rashid was written in elegant calligraphy at the top. "You've missed so many meetings because of everything going on," Emma explained. "But you're still part of the team. We thought maybe you'd like to make it official." Sarah traced the hyphenated surname. She'd started using it at school, but seeing it written like this, so formal and permanent, made her throat tight with emotion. The party continued into the evening, with the twins eventually falling asleep on their new playmat, surrounded by toys and wrapping paper. As guests began to leave, Sarah helped Amira clean up while Karim carried the boys to their nursery. "Today was perfect," Sarah said, carefully wrapping leftover pastries. "Thank you both for—" A sudden crash from upstairs cut her off. Then came a sound that made her blood freeze. Karim shouting. Everything happened at once. Marcus and the security team rushed upstairs while Detective Martinez pulled her off-duty weapon, moving to protect Sarah and Amira. Detective Chen was already calling for backup. "The twins!" Sarah tried to run for the stairs, but Amira held her back. "Wait," Amira's voice was tense but controlled. "Let security handle it." Seconds stretched like hours. Then came the sound of running footsteps, and Karim appeared at the top of the stairs, a twin in each arm. The boys were crying but appeared unharmed. "He was in the nursery," Karim's voice shook with barely contained fury. "Robert somehow got in through the window. When I walked in, we've got movement on the east perimeter." Marcus's voice crackled. "Over the security radio. Subject is heading for the woods. Stay with them," Detective Martinez ordered Chen before rushing out with the security team. Sarah couldn't stop shaking as she helped calm the twins. Adam clung to Amira while Aaron buried his face in Karim's neck, their earlier joy completely forgotten. "The window was reinforced," Karim was saying to Detective Chen. "All our security upgrades. He shouldn't have been able—" "He's been planning this," Sarah realized, remembering his strange calm at the festival. "That whole scene at school was just to distract us, make us think he was getting desperate and sloppy." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The house buzzed with activity as officers arrived, gathering evidence and taking statements. The twins refused to be put down, whimpering if either Karim or Amira moved too far away. "We can't stay here tonight," Amira said firmly. "The boys won't sleep in that room again, and frankly, neither would I." Karim nodded, already on his phone. "I'm calling the Four Seasons. They have excellent security and we'll take the penthouse floor." "No hotels," Detective Chen interrupted. "Too many variables, too many potential access points. I have a better idea, but you'll need to trust me." An hour later, they pulled up to a sprawling ranch house outside the city. Emma's family home sat on several acres of land with clear sightlines in all directions and state-of-the-art security systems, courtesy of Detective Chen's law enforcement background. "It's not as luxurious as you're used to," Emma's mother, Grace, apologized as she showed them to their rooms. "But it's safe. James designed the security himself, and we have police patrols checking the perimeter regularly." "It's perfect," Amira assured her, settling the twins into the portable cribs the Chens had quickly assembled. "We can't thank you enough." Sarah found herself sharing Emma's room, while Karim and Amira took the guest suite next door. The twins would sleep in a small study between the two rooms, where they could be easily monitored. "I'm so sorry about your party," Emma said as they got ready for bed. "Everything was so perfect, and then—" "Hey," Sarah managed a small smile. "The party was still perfect. We can't let him ruin everything good in our lives." But later, lying awake in Emma's twin bed, Sarah couldn't shake the image of Robert in the twins' nursery. What would have happened if Karim hadn't walked in when he did? The thought made her physically ill. In the next room, she could hear Karim and Amira talking in low voices with Detective Chen, who had stayed to help coordinate security. Words like safe house and witness protection drifted through the walls, making her stomach clench. The twins slept fitfully, whimpering in their dreams. Sarah slipped out of bed and sat between their cribs, humming the lullaby their mother used to sing. Gradually they settled, their tiny hands reaching out in sleep to grab her fingers. "I won't let him hurt you," she whispered. "I promise." What Sarah didn't know was that Robert Sullivan was closer than anyone realized. The police search had focused on the woods behind the mansion, but he had doubled back through an underground storm drain he'd discovered during his surveillance. Now he watched the Chen house from a distant hill, noting the police patrol's patterns and the location of security cameras. His earlier attempt had failed, but he'd learned valuable information about the family's reactions and security responses. Next time he wouldn't fail. Next time he'd take back what he considered his, and no amount of money or security could stop him. Days at the Chen residence fell into an uneasy routine. The twins gradually relaxed in their new environment, especially with Emma's patient attention and her mother's warm presence. Grace Chen had a way with children that reminded Sarah of her own mother, and watching her with the twins brought both comfort and a bitter-sweet ache. Detective Chen had converted his home office into a command center, coordinating with police and private security. Karim worked remotely, managing his business empire from a laptop while never letting the twins out of his sight. Amira threw herself into creating a sense of normalcy, cooking with Grace and helping the children maintain their routines. "We can't live like this forever," Sarah overheard Karim saying one night, his voice heavy with concern. "The children need stability, a permanent home." "James has some connections in the FBI," Grace replied softly. "They're building a case against Robert. It's not just about the restraining order violation anymore. This was a premeditated attempt to—" "Please," Amira interrupted, "not where the children might hear." Sarah retreated from the hallway, slipping into the family room where Emma and David were helping the twins build a block tower. They'd been spending every afternoon there, ostensibly working on homework, but really providing moral support and distraction. "Higher," Aaron demanded, while Adam carefully placed another block on top. "Engineering in their blood," David commented with a smile, "just like their dad." Sarah started at the casual reference to Karim as the twins' father, but realized it felt right. Karim and Amira had become their parents in every way that mattered, while Robert had become something else entirely, a shadow threatening their happiness, a nightmare they couldn't quite shake. The peaceful moment shattered as all the lights in the house suddenly went dark. "Everyone stay calm," Detective Chen's voice carried from the command center. "Backup generator should kick in." But it didn't. Someone had disabled it. The twins began to cry, startled by the darkness. Sarah scooped them up instinctively, while Emma and David pulled out their phones for light. Security radios crackled with urgent communications. "All units, we have a breach in the northwest perimeter." Marcus's voice was tense. "Power lines have been cut. Generator cables are severed. Multiple cameras down." Sarah's heart pounded as Karim and Amira rushed into the room. "Get the children to the safe room," Detective Chen ordered, his weapon drawn. "Grace, show them." Grace. Chen moved with practiced efficiency, leading them down a hidden staircase to a reinforced basement room. "James had this built when he joined Homicide," she explained, securing the heavy door. "Completely self-contained power system, separate ventilation, months' worth of supplies." The space was surprisingly comfortable, with cots, chairs, and even some toys. But Sarah barely registered the details, focused on keeping the twins calm. As various security alerts echoed from the radio. Movement in the East Garden. Second suspect spotted near the garage. All units converge on... Then silence. The radio had gone dead. "He's jamming communications." Detective Chen's voice was grim. "He's been planning this for weeks." A loud crash came from upstairs, followed by the sound of breaking glass. The twins whimpered, and Sarah held them tighter, singing their favorite lullaby in a shaking voice. "The door is reinforced steel," Grace assured them. "No one's getting in here." But Sarah knew Robert's determination. He'd had time to plan, to study, to find every weakness. The darkness felt suffocating, broken only by their phone lights and the soft glow of the safe room's backup systems. Footsteps moved above them, heavy and deliberate. Then came Robert's voice, amplified as if through a megaphone. "I know you're down there." All this, the security, the safe room, the police, it just proves what I've been saying. You stole my children, hid them behind walls and guards. What kind of life is that for them? Sarah felt Karim and Amira move closer, forming a protective circle around her and the twins. Emma and David pressed close too, offering silent support. "They deserve a normal life." Robert's voice cracked with emotion. "With their real father, not some rich foreigners playing house." "Real fathers don't terrify their children," Sarah whispered, though he couldn't hear her. The twins trembled in her arms, and she realized they recognized his voice and feared it. More crashes from above, closer now. Robert was searching systematically, looking for the safe room's entrance. Each sound made the twins flinch, and Sarah's heart ached for their fear. Then, unexpectedly, music began playing from somewhere. Upstairs, a familiar lullaby, the one their mother used to sing. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Remember this?" Robert's voice was softer now, almost gentle. "Your mother would sing this every night. Before everything went wrong, before I failed you all." Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks. The lullaby brought back memories of happier times, of a father who once knew how to love instead of hate. "It's not too late," he continued. "We can be a family again. Just open the door. Let me make things right." For a moment, the only sounds were the lullaby and the twins' quiet sniffles. Then came new noises, sirens in the distance growing closer. The cavalry was coming. Robert must have heard them too. His next words were rushed, desperate. "Sarah, please, don't let them take you away again. Don't let them erase what's left of your mother." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had been so focused on protecting her brothers, on building a new life, that she hadn't fully processed her grief for her mother, or for the father she'd once known and loved. But looking at the twins, at Karim and Amira's protective embrace, at her friend's steadfast support, she knew the truth. Loving her new family didn't mean erasing her mother's memory. It meant honoring her by protecting her children, by choosing love over fear, by breaking the cycle of pain. The sirens were very close now. Through the safe room's ventilation system, they could hear the chaos erupting above as police stormed the house. Robert's desperate shouts became more distant, then faded entirely. But Sarah knew this wasn't really the end. Even if they caught him tonight, the emotional aftermath would take time to heal. The twins would need help processing their trauma. She would need to reconcile her conflicting feelings about her father. Their whole family would need to rebuild their sense of security. Looking around at the people crowded into the safe room, her chosen family, her protectors, her friends, Sarah realized that they would face it all together. And somehow, that made even the darkest moments bearable. Spring bloomed in vibrant colors across the gardens of the Al-Rashid estate. The mansion had been completely renovated over the winter months, with state-of-the-art security seamlessly integrated into its elegant design. But more importantly, it had been transformed from a showplace into a true home, filled with children's laughter and family memories. Sarah stood in the transformed nursery, now painted in soft greens and blues, watching the twins play with their new train set. At almost 2 years old, Adam and Aaron were thriving, hitting all their developmental milestones, speaking in complete sentences, and showing distinct personalities. Adam remained the adventurous one, always first to try new things, while Aaron was the problem solver, figuring out how to build increasingly complex train track configurations. "Sissy, look!" Aaron called out, proudly showing off his latest creation. "It goes all the way around." "That's amazing, buddy." Sarah knelt beside him, marveling at how far they'd come from those terrifying days of uncertainty. The past 6 months had brought massive changes. Robert Sullivan had finally accepted a plea deal, agreeing to terminate his parental rights in exchange for a lighter sentence. He would get counseling and rehabilitation, and maybe someday, when the children were older and ready, they could rebuild some kind of relationship. But for now, they were safe. "Sarah," Amira's voice called from downstairs, "can you come down? We have visitors." In the grand foyer, Emma and David waited with their families, all dressed up for the occasion. Today wasn't just any spring day, it was adoption day. "Ready for this?" Emma hugged her tight, while David gave her a supportive thumbs up. "More than ready," Sarah smiled, smoothing her new dress, a beautiful sage green that matched the twins' little suits. The last few months had been filled with therapy sessions, court appearances and paperwork, but they'd also been filled with love, healing, and the gradual building of new traditions. The Al-Rashids had even expanded their family further, opening their hearts and home to other children in need. As if, on cue, excited voices echoed from the garden. 2 young children, Maya, age 7, and her brother Lucas, age 5, came running in. The Al-Rashids had begun fostering them 3 months ago, after learning about their situation at a local children's center. Like Sarah and the twins, they had experienced trauma but were blossoming under love and care. "Is it time?" Maya asked eagerly. "Are we all going to be real brothers and sisters now?" "We already are," Sarah hugged her. "The papers just make it official." Karim and Amira joined them, each carrying a twin. The whole group piled into several cars, heading to the courthouse where their family would be legally recognized at last. The adoption ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. Judge Martinez, a familiar face from their earlier legal battles, smiled warmly as she made her ruling. "By the power vested in me by the state, I hereby declare the adoptions of Sarah, Adam, Aaron, Maya, and Lucas by Karim and Amira al-Rashid complete and final. Congratulations to the entire al-Rashid family." The courtroom erupted in applause and happy tears. Emma and David's families, who had become extended family through their unwavering support, celebrated alongside them. Detective Chen and his wife hugged everyone, while Detective Martinez wiped away tears of her own. Back at the mansion, the celebration continued with a huge party. The garden had been transformed with twinkling lights and flowers, creating a magical atmosphere. Children ran and played while adults chatted and enjoyed Amira's legendary cooking. "Speech," someone called out, and all eyes turned to Sarah. Taking a deep breath, she stood, looking out at the gathered faces. Her family, both chosen and extended. A year ago, I thought family was something you were born into, something that could break beyond repair. I was so focused on surviving, on protecting my brothers, that I couldn't imagine truly living. She paused, emotion making her voice thick. But then I learned that family isn't about blood or birth certificates. It's about love, choice, and protection. It's about people who stand by you in the darkest times and celebrate with you in the brightest ones. She looked at Emma and David, who had never wavered in their friendship. At the Chen and Martinez families, who had become such an integral part of their support system. At Maya and Lucas, who had brought new joy and energy to their home. At the twins, growing strong and confident in their secure environment. Finally, she looked at Karim and Amira, who had opened their hearts and changed all their lives. Mom, Dad, thank you for showing us what real love looks like, for teaching us that family can heal, grow, and become stronger through challenges, for giving us not just a home, but a future filled with possibilities. Amira was openly crying, now while Karim tried to maintain his composure, but failed. The twins toddled over to hug their sister's legs, while Maya and Lucas joined the family embrace. As the party continued into the evening, Sarah stood at the edge of the garden, taking in the scene. The mansion's lights glowed warmly behind them, no longer a symbol of wealth but of sanctuary. The security measures were still there, but they felt less like barriers and more like the protective embrace of a caring family. She thought about her mother, knowing she would be proud of the family they had become. The pain of losing her would never completely fade, but it had been transformed into something beautiful, a legacy of love that continued through her children and extended to others in need. A shooting star streaked across the darkening sky, and Sarah made a wish, not for herself but for all the children still waiting for their forever families. She hoped they would find what she had found, the healing power of unconditional love, the strength of chosen family, and the joy of new beginnings, because in the end that's what their story was about. Not the darkness they had escaped, but the light they had found together. Not the family they had lost, but the larger, stronger, more beautiful family they had built from the ashes of their pain. As the twins called out, "Sissy," and Maya and Lucas tugged her toward the dance floor, Sarah went willingly, laughing as Karim and Amira joined them. This was their happy ending, not an ending at all, really, but a beginning. A beginning filled with promise, love, and the unshakable knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged. The end. Dear listeners, we hope this story of love, resilience, and the true meaning of family has touched your hearts. The journey of Sarah, Adam, Aaron, and the Al-Rashids reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we choose, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. For more heartwarming tales of hope and family, click on the playlist to your left. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear about your own experiences with chosen family and unconditional love. Remember, every like and subscription helps us continue bringing you these powerful stories of transformation and hope. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love to change lives.